Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear guests. Today is the 22nd of February 2022. It is 2 p.m. Moscow time. We're beginning this session of the Dissertation Council. The dissertation was written by Svetlana Begicheva. The dissertation is submitted in conformity with the requirements for the academic degree of the candidate of Economic Sciences, Scientific Specialty 522, Mathematical and Instrumental Methods of Economics. The topic of the dissertation is Models of Availability and Quality of Emergency Care in the Megapolis. Under the order issued by the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University, Professor Gnyotov, I, Professor Alexey Vorontsovsky, Doctor of Economic Sciences of St. Petersburg State University, have been appointed the chairperson of this Dissertation Council. I will be chairing the session of the Dissertation Council remotely. The other members of the Dissertation Council have been appointed by the same order. They are Professor Igor Akulin, Doctor of Medical Sciences, St. Petersburg State University. Professor Viktor Voronov, Doctor of Economic Sciences, Associate Professor of the Department of Finance, St. Petersburg State Economic University. Some members of the Dissertation Council are attending the session online. They are Professor Viktor Ivanov, Doctor of Economic Sciences, St. Petersburg State University. Can you hear us and see us? Yes, I can hear you and see you. Professor Alexandra Kievich, Doctor of Economic Sciences, Professor of the Department of Financial Management, Polesky State University. Can you hear us and see us? Yes, I can hear you and see you. The candidate for the degree, Svetlana Begicheva, is also here. The research supervisor, Doctor of Economic Sciences, the head of the Department of Business Informatics of Ural State University, Professor Dmitry Nazarov. I would like to ask the members of the Dissertation Council who are participating in the session online to switch off their microphones. Please make sure that your microphone is switched on when you are given the floor. The session of the Dissertation Council is being recorded and broadcast on the official website of St. Petersburg State University. It is also being interpreted from Russian into English. You can ask questions or make comments about the dissertation using the email address that you can find on the official web page. The questions are to be relevant to the contents of the dissertation or to the contents of the presentation. This will allow you to participate in the academic discussion. The technical personnel will refer the questions to me, and I will read them out during the discussion. The questions are supposed to be relevant to the contents of the dissertation. The authors are to state their name, position, and workplace. The questions that are not relevant to the academic discussion or to the contents of the dissertation and anonymous questions will not be read out. Under the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, issued by St. Petersburg State University, The session of the Dissertation Council is duly constituted, provided at least 2/3 of the members of the Dissertation Council are present. The total number is not to be fewer than 4 people. This Dissertation Council consists of 5 people, 5 of which are present, including 3 members of the Dissertation Council who are attending this session online. We can hear them and see them, therefore we have a quorum. I would like to ask the representative of the Department for Dissertation Council Management to make an attendance list. Now a few words about the agenda. The agenda is as follows. Number 1. The chairperson's presentation about the documents submitted by the academic degree seeker and their conformity with the requirements. The chairperson's reply to questions, if any. The degree seeker's presentation providing an overview and findings of the research, about 15 minutes. Next, questions to the degree seeker regarding the presentation or regarding the research in general. Replies to the questions, then reports to the dissertation, including external reports. Then the council members will be taking the floor in turn. They will read out their reports and ask questions or their critical remarks about the dissertation, about 10 minutes per person. Next, the academic degree seekers comments about the reports and replies to the questions. Next, academic discussion. After that, the chairperson will read out the questions received via email. Please note that questions which take more than 2 minutes to read will not be read out. Next, replies to the questions, if any, presentation of the academic supervisor. Next, deliberations of the members of the Dissertation Council before the open balloting. Should it be necessary, we will decide if we need a technical break for our deliberations. Next, open balloting. Vote counting and recording the results in the protocol. Making a decision on whether to confer or not the academic degree. The academic degree seeker's closing speech. That is our agenda for today. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions or objections to the agenda? There are no questions or objections. Then I suggest that we continue our session. Please leave your telephones set on silent mode. The council members who are participating in the session online are advised not to switch off their mobile phones so that we can contact you in case of a technical failure. Thank you. Now I would like to proceed with the agenda. We'll start with my presentation. The dissertation is submitted by Svetlana Begicheva The dissertation is submitted in conformity with the requirements for the academic degree of the candidate of Economic Sciences, Scientific Specialty 522. The dissertation was approved for the defense by the order of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University. The dissertation was completed in Ural State University. The research advisor is Doctor of Economics, Professor Dmitry Nazarov. The documents submitted by the academic degree seeker comply with the major requirements and are in compliance with these requirements. The representative of the Department for Dissertation Council Management has the copies of the documents. Before giving the floor to the academic degree seeker, I would like to ask the members of the Dissertation Council if they have any questions about the documents and if it is necessary for me to read out the list of documents. No questions. Thank you. Now I give the floor to the academic degree seeker. You have 15 minutes. You have a long presentation. Please keep within the time limits. The floor is yours. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, dear Chairperson, I'm Svetlana Begicheva. The dissertation is submitted in conformity for the requirements of the candidate of Economic Sciences, Scientific Specialty 522, Mathematical and Instrumental Methods of Economics. The topic of the dissertation is Models of Availability and Quality of Emergency Care in the Megapolis. The dissertation was completed in Ural State University. The academic supervisor is Professor Dmitry Nazarov. One of the priorities stipulated by the state program on the development of healthcare is to increase availability and quality of emergency healthcare. The focus of the dissertation is a comprehensive assessment of availability and quality of emergency healthcare. The analysis of theoretical works allowed us to come to the conclusion that the existing models are not comprehensive ones, since then they focus on specific indicators. Moreover, each research deals with a specific region or a specific country. Therefore, the topic of the dissertation is relevant. And it is also worth mentioning that my dissertation deals with the development and adjusting of the accessibility models and models of quality for the emergency care. The pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, also makes the topic of the dissertation more relevant. So the purpose of the dissertation is to solve a scientific and practical problem, namely the development of economic, mathematical and instrumental methods for a comprehensive assessment of the quality and availability of emergency medical care for the purpose of using in the management of the emergency medical care in the context of the rapid growth of megacities and the formation of the infrastructure. The object of the research are hospitals and medical service providers. The subject of the research is the process associated with the management of the ambulance service in the megapolis and its reflection by methods of mathematical and simulation modeling. The scientific novelty is connected with the development of a system of simulation models and tools that allow to assess the impact of management decisions on changes in the organization structure and the process of providing emergency medical services on the availability and quality of emergency medical care in the context of the growth of megacities and the development of their infrastructure. The theoretical significance is connected with the development of methods for modeling the activities of ambulance services in the context of the Russian model of the EMC organization. The practical significance is connected with the possibility of using the simulation models to ensure the possibility of optimizing the structure of the organization to improve the quality and availability of emergency medical care. The materials of the dissertation research are used in the educational process of the Ural State Economic University and are also used in educational courses such as computer modeling of economics, simulation modeling, fuzzy control technologies. The main research findings were discussed at 14 national and international conferences, and I have published 26 research papers. Some of them are published in peer-reviewed journals recommended by the Ministry of Education and Science, and 5 of them are published in journals indexed by the Web of Science or Scopus. Now I would like to tell you about the main provisions for the defense. Number 1. The dissertation develops a conceptual scheme for modeling the availability and quality of emergency medical care based on the methodologies of system analysis and simulation modeling. The first stage of simulation modeling is the development of the conceptual model. I developed a conceptual model which includes 4 main components of emergency medical care. Number 1, quality of the living environment. Number 2, structure of the treatment. Number 3, process of providing medical care. And number 4, quality of the results. And all these components that I have mentioned are interconnected and intertwined and have mutual impact. The conceptual model for availability and quality of medical health care is presented on the slide. It is different from the existing models in the following way. Number 1, the model includes such indicator as the quality of living environment. In other words, it is population number, territorial accessibility, and so on. Number 2, the model takes into account the fact that there are 2 sub-processes. Number 1, receiving calls from the population by the emergency dispatcher. The second sub-process includes the provision of medical services by the medical team. The research develops a model of accessibility and quality, which includes the following aspects. Number 1, to identify 3 models, each of them is designed to assess the quality. Number 2, it is important to take into account the quality of the living environment, which is assessed by the first model, the impact on the quality of the structure of the organization, and on the process, which is assessed by the second model. And then the set of the actions are assessed by the third model. So, the system, the method of system dynamics was implemented with the help of the agent-based modeling. The third model was developed on using the theory of fuzzy cognitive map, and it is used to aggregate and analyze expert opinion of the patients. The next provision, the dissertation develops a predictive model of the need for ambulance services in the megapolis based on the analysis of the demand change driven by the quality of the living environment. The predictive model is based on the analysis of literature which deal with population turnover. The graph, which you can see on the slide, includes only the most relevant elements and only such data that can be calculated or available. The enlarged model flowchart of the predictive model is shown on the slide. The transition from the status did not apply to the EM as to the status turned to the EMS occurred to rate determined by the factors that had both direct and indirect effects on the population's needs for ambulance services. The dynamics of these indicators is calculated with the help of the differential equations, which you see on the right. I use statistical data for the model, and the diagram is shown on the slide. Provision number 3. The Dissertation develops a multi-approach simulation model of the ambulance activity environment in the anti-logic environment has been developed. Unlike the existing ones, it is designed for a comprehensive assessment of the availability and quality of emergency medical care. The analysis allowed us to formalize the process of ambulance calls. We developed multi-approach simulation model using any logic environment. The model includes 3 active agents, such as modeling of calls, actions of dispatchers, and medical team. The use of this model will allow us to optimize and analyze the quality of medical services and to answer the so-called what-if question. The model was implemented in the city of Yekaterinburg. When the model was introduced, the GIS map of St. Petersburg was showing emergency departments, emergency cars, and patients. We use geographical coordinations and data about 14 calls from patients, as well as data of epidemiological monitoring of patients with a stroke between 2008 and 2014. We also were able to assess the dynamics. The model which you see on this slide was used to model or to simulate the dispatchers' actions when they were distributing the calls. This allowed us to build agent-state diagram. The multi-approach model collects statistic data for availability and quality. Unlike the existing simulation models, the multi-approach model allows us to take into account 6 quality indicators. The extra indicators are marked in blue on the slide. The imitation model implements the following experiments: the simple experiment and the variation of parameters. The model allows us to reflect the actions of the emergency medical care in St. Petersburg, in the city of Yekaterinburg. We conducted a number of experiments which allowed us to compare the target indicators which are expected to be achieved by 2025 according to the general plan. The experiment shows that the number of calls which are answered within the 20-minute time limit will increase, and medical teams will have less workload. Next provision to be defended. The dissertation develops a method of fuzzy assessment of the availability and quality of emergency medical care. The integration of factor analysis and fuzzy cognitive modeling allows us to take into account different indirect factors, such as patients' satisfaction, improvement of their health, and so on. We calculated the parameters using the surveys among the patients of the city of Ekaterinburg. So the experiment and the multi-approach model, as well as the fuzzy method, allowed us to come to very important conclusions. The slide shows 9 indicators which are assessed by the complex of models. The blue indicators are those which were received with the help of the fuzzy assessment model. We also conducted a fuzzy assessment of quality and availability, and the analysis showed that the quality indicators improved by 8% in comparison with the first experiment. So the main research findings are as follows. The conceptual model of availability and quality of emergency healthcare has been justified. We have developed a simulation model which predicts EMC calls. We have developed a multi-approach imitation models which allows us to simulate the actions of medical healthcare. That is all. Thank you. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, who wants to ask a question? I don't have any questions. Are there any questions? I have a question. I would like to ask you the following question. Can you give us the calculations of the efficiency? Can you give some specific numbers, like the decrease in costs or the decrease of transportation costs and so on? Unfortunately, I have not heard any specific indicators or specific numbers in your presentation. Thank you very much for your question. I didn't make any specific calculations in the dissertation. I did not have the available data. I checked how we can calculate the payment for emergency care. However, I was not able to find the data which is available for their methods, and I don't have my own methodology. Thank you. Are there any other questions? I have a question about the scientific tools. I know that each department has its own preferences when it comes to methods. My question is out of scientific curiosity. Did you try to use the bias network systems? Why am I asking this question? The bias networks are sometimes more preferable than fuzzy logics, for example, because the mathematical framework there is better. I'm not saying that you had to use them. I'm just curious if you did it. Yes, you were right when you said that each department has its preferences. Our department really likes fuzzy logic methods. Why did I use this method? I used it to analyze opinions provided by the patients. Moreover, the fuzzy logic method is also important to analyze expert opinions. The use of this method allows us to convert opinions into specific numbers, and I thought it was expedient to use this particular method in my research. Are you using bias networks? I'm not using them myself, but I cannot say anything about other scholars working in our university. Are there any other questions? Professor Voronov? Your section 1.1 is quite interesting. You describe the models which simulate the organization of emergency care. Do you have any data about the characteristics of these models from the point of view of availability? Okay, availability is a characteristic, is a quality characteristic which is responsible for achieving emergency care despite the geographical location, describe the financial aspect and so on. In my opinion, the overall number of emergency care calls over a period is among the indicators. We can also add such indicators as percent of emergency care calls and also the daily workload for medical teams. I believe all these indicators describe the accessibility aspect. Probably I didn't formulate the question correctly. You write about the organization of emergency care. How does it impact the accessibility indicators? Okay, what's your assessment? Which model do you think will develop in the future, will be developing in the future? That's a tricky question. In my opinion, the Russian model provides more accessibility to emergency care if we compare it with other systems. The French and German system is the most complicated one from the point of view of the financial aspect, since it requires paying for the doctor to come into your place, and if it's emergency care, then the price could be really high. So in my opinion, the Russian system provides better accessibility of healthcare. I also have a question, or rather a couple of questions. You talked about resultative indicators, several of them. And you talked about the precision of the model. So what do you mean when you say that the model was precise? I conducted a number of experiments, and the analogic environment has a possibility to conduct the variability of parameters experiment. The indicators were set with the help of probability variation. Therefore, I could set several replications. I could launch several experiments which allowed me to get target indicators. And the target indicators could be different with the same input data. As a result, we got some average data. It allowed me to compare real data with my own model. Does that mean that you conducted several experiments? Yes, I conducted several experiments. Moreover, the experiments were carried out in the analogic environment. The environment allowed us to make several iterations and several replications, and as a result you get several experiments. You also mentioned the probability. How did you calculate it? The probabilities were set through distribution. The probability indicators are time. The indicators were taken from the public reports, and the distribution was similar to Poisson distribution. This is a debatable issue. Why did I take this specific type of distribution? As I've already mentioned, I had data of epidemiological monitoring for 2008-2014. It included different temporal indicators such as symptoms, calls to the emergency care, and so on. This data allowed us to develop the histogram, the distribution histogram for the temporal aspect. And the distribution form was very similar to Poisson distribution. In other words, the distribution has a long right tail. The Poisson distribution is used for discrete variables. However, I would like to provide some comments here. The data that I had were provided by the medical teams, and then they were written by hand. And they were all, the figures were divided by 5. So it was easier for us to use this data. So Poisson distribution is one of the most important distributions in theory. So I suppose these are all the rationale that I can provide. On slide 14, you gave a differential equation. Why did you use it? How was it implemented? It looks very simple. Yes, it's quite a simple equation. The models of system dynamics take into account differential equations as well as other equations. But as a result, we get this simple equation. When we model data of emergency care, we come across the following challenge. There is no statistical data available for research. If the website in Great Britain has lots of statistical data, Russian websites for emergency care do not provide such data. In fact, we have only aggregated indicators. Therefore, my dissertation contains tables with aggregated indicators, which I used in my research. So the equation is quite simple. This is the result. This results from the fact that I had limited data available. Moreover, I could include growth coefficient in the analogic environment. I did not solve the equation myself. The analogic environment did it for me. Well, I have some issues I would like to check, so please take it into account. This is for your future research. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, are there any other questions? Thank you. We have not received any external reviews, any external reports. Now we will proceed with the agenda. The next item on the agenda is reports written by the members of the Dissertation Council. Please focus on the most relevant parts of your reports and on the critical remarks. How would you like to answer the questions? Do you want to ask, or rather, do you want to answer the questions and make your comments after each report, or do you want to provide comments after all the reports have been read? I would like to answer after each report. Now, let us move on to the next item on the agenda. Reports by the members of the Dissertation Council. The reports are published on the official website of St. Petersburg State University, where you can read them. So I suggest that you focus on the most relevant parts of your report. Please focus on those parts that you consider most relevant. I would like to give the floor to Professor Kievich. Dear colleagues, I was not expecting to be first. This is my first time in such a dissertation council. I would like to say that I have never met the candidate for the degree before. However, I would like to say that the dissertation is relevant and very up-to-date, since accessibility of medical care is an important criteria for the quality of medical care in the country in general. Moreover, the Russian Federation is supposed to provide equal access to medical care despite the social status. Moreover, the reforms in the area of healthcare are also designed to improve the efficiency of healthcare. Therefore, I suggest that, or I suppose that the dissertation has also novelty. I'm not going to retell the contents of the dissertation. I would like to focus on the conclusion that I made. I have not found any drawbacks. I had a question which I asked, but I did not receive a specific answer. Still, my analysis of the dissertation allows me to make the following conclusion. The dissertation by Svetlana Begicheva, Models of Availability and Quality of Emergency Care in the Megapolis, complies with the major requirements set forth in the relevant order of St. Petersburg State University. And Svetlana Begicheva can be awarded the academic degree of the candidate of Economic Sciences, Scientific Specialty 522, Mathematical and Instrumental Methods of Economics. The dissertation is compliant with sections 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order. Do you have any questions about my report?
Слышно хорошо. Слышу вас.
What can you tell us about the report? I would like to thank Professor Kievich. I heard your question. Well, I didn't make any calculations, so thank you for reading my dissertation and thank you for your kind words. I give the floor to Professor Viktor Ivanov. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. I will follow the chairperson's recommendations, so I will focus on the most relevant parts of my report. The dissertation is relevant since it provides the assessment of accessibility and quality of emergency care. The dissertation is relevant since it is necessary to develop a comprehensive analysis of the availability and quality of emergency care. The dissertation focuses on a multi-approach model. The dissertation uses relevant methods and tools. The models developed by the degree seeker can be applied in practice. The novelty of the research and the credibility of the research findings are based on the logical research. Moreover, the structure of the dissertation is in line with the purpose and tasks of the dissertation. The dissertation develops the methods for the development of the assessment of decision-making on the availability and quality of emergency care. The main research findings are as follows. Justification of the conceptual model of accessibility and quality of emergency care. Next, justification of the model for emergency care based on the combination of systemic and agent modeling, development of the simulation model, which is a predictive model and allows us to take into account different factors. And number 4, the dissertation justifies the methods of fuzzy assessment for accessibility and quality of emergency care, which allow to get data before taking decisions about the provision of emergency care. The dissertation has both theoretical significance and practical significance. The research findings can be used by emergency care departments in their work. I would like to say that I have a few debatable issues here. Well, the dissertation mentions such concept as strategic planning. However, it is described through the light of the planning horizon. I don't think that this approach to strategic planning is relevant here and accurate. Moreover, I would like the academic degree seeker to explain what she means by the strategic level of the decision making. I didn't really like such terms. So the strategic decision is probably synonymous with long-term decisions. However, I don't think I could agree with this stance. Number 3. I have some doubts about the calculation of the correction coefficient. It's page 87. I would like to say that I have some doubts because the significance of the indicators that you take into account can vary depending on the year and on the epidemiological situation. For example, COVID-19 pandemic increases the number of emergency calls. So I suppose you should provide some explanations here. And there are some inaccuracies here and self-repetitions, for example, on pages 50 and 51. In general, I would like to say that the critical remarks do not change my overall positive assessment of the dissertation. It is written very professionally. The topic of the dissertation complies with the passport of scientific specialty 522, mathematical and instrumental methods in economics. And I would like to say that my overall conclusion is as follows. The dissertation by Svetlana Begicheva complies with the major requirements set forth in the relevant order issued by St. Petersburg State University, number 11181/1, as of the 19th of November 2021, and Svetlana Begicheva can be awarded the academic degree of the candidate of economic sciences, scientific specialty 522, mathematical, statistical, and instrumental methods in economics. Thank you very much. Please answer the questions. Thank you very much. Here I would like to say that I agree with his critical remarks. I would like to clarify that strategic planning can be interpreted not only through planning horizon. I did not emphasize this in my dissertation. However, I suppose that I should have emphasized this in my dissertation. However, when it comes to long-term planning, according to the theory of strategic management, strategic decisions are long-term in character, and they can be regarded as long-term decisions which define the future of the company in the long term. The leading researchers believe that planning horizon has shifted from 5 to 10 years to 3 to 5 years. And global economy and Russian economy is characterized by quick changes. Therefore, the planning for more than one year is already a strategic one, since 1 year may see drastic changes in the environment. You also asked me about correction coefficients. The work was finished before the pandemic. Before the pandemic started, the average indicators regarding emergency care were sort of similar. We could have calculated the correction coefficient, but I suppose this is topic for my future research. Theoretically, we can calculate, and the logic allows us to calculate correction coefficient. It takes into account the difference between the real data and the calculated data. Therefore, we get the correction coefficient. However, this option is available only in the professional version, which I do not have. So I suppose you're right that this doesn't work under current conditions, and I agree with the technical remarks. I'm sorry. Would that be all? Yes? Now I give the floor to Professor Kulin. Dear Chairperson, dear members of the Dissertation Council, I would like to say that I find your dissertation really interesting. I have a medical background. I have an extensive experience in executive positions in the area of healthcare. The first question was about the difference between our healthcare system and other healthcare systems. And I would like to say that our system of emergency care is unique. There's no other similar system. There are very few doctors in the Western system. They use paramedics in emergency care. We are sometimes asked, why do doctors work in the emergency care? It is not because we do not know how to organize emergency care. We suppose that using paramedics is not enough. Well, I can talk at length about it. Well, I would like to express my personal opinion. The dissertation deals with state emergency care. Last week we were discussing a dissertation about private medical care. And when it comes to private medical care, you can make specific economic calculations. However, here, when we talk about state emergency care, we have the available data about the cost in state emergency care. I liked that you collected all the indicators and you developed a concept. Let's imagine we take a doctor or a paramedic, and your model allows us to make all the calculations, since it's a very comprehensive model. I'm really happy that I'm surrounded here by mathematicians and economists. St. Petersburg State University is the only university which allows to bring together experts from different areas. I have seen many works about the models of emergency care and so on. Works usually deal with the economic aspect. What I like about this work is it has a collection of different indicators. It has a mathematical model. Mathematical modeling is important for such works. That is why this work is unique. I have never come across such an approach. So I suppose that the topic of the dissertation is really relevant. It allows us to make some economic calculations. The best part of the work is the economic part. However, it is unique in its character. I could talk at length about the dissertation, so my conclusion is as follows. The dissertation is relevant. It is very interesting. It provides the concept of modeling. Moreover, the dissertation provides its own approach. It is based on a Donabedian model, however, it is adjusted to the purpose of the dissertation. I like the context of the dissertation. And you deal mostly with fuzzy assessment, and I really liked it because everything is fuzzy in healthcare. So the research findings are valid and credible. The guidance, the guidelines, and the theoretical and practical significance is without any doubt. The papers reflect the major research findings. The research findings are credible. I do not have any major comments, however, I have one question. What are the perspectives of practical implementation of your model on a regular basis? If we take into account the financial aspect, don't you see that it's going to be too costly? Now, my overall conclusion. The dissertation by Svetlana Begicheva, Models of Availability and Quality of Emergency Care in the Megapolis, Scientific Specialty 522, Mathematical, Statistical and Instrumental Methods of Economics. This is a complete, serious research which makes an important contribution to science and has practical application. So the dissertation by Svetlana Begicheva complies with the major requirements set forth in order as of the 19th of November 2021, number 11181/1. And Svetlana Begicheva can be awarded the academic degree of the Candidate of Economic Sciences, Scientific Specialty 522, Mathematical, Statistical and Instrumental Methods of Economics. Thank you very much. Please answer the questions. Thank you very much for your question. I would like to say that digitalization is important now, and it makes the use of different types of data really relevant. This allows us to distribute the research findings, and moreover, the instruments developed in my dissertation will allow healthcare to apply the methods in practice. Healthcare is a public good. Therefore, the financial aspect should be dealt by the authorities. This is a state healthcare we are talking about. So it's quite complicated to talk about the financial aspect. So I think it is quite complicated to implement this model because there is not enough data. So I don't think it's going to be too costly to implement the model. Thank you very much. I give the floor to Professor Viktor Voronov. I really liked the report of my colleague. We have talked a lot about the relevance. However, I would like to reiterate that the topic of the dissertation is relevant. I would like to add a few words here. The implementation of this model in practice and such simulation models in general will probably improve and increase the decision-making process, the informed decision-making process. So I would like to say that the topic of the dissertation is relevant. The research findings are credible, and I would like to emphasize that the reference list includes more than 200 items. The dissertation also has scientific novelty, and I write about it in my report. I also like how you justify the conceptual model, and I also like how you justify and developed the multi-approach model, which can be applied to Russian emergency care. You have also made many presentations and have written a lot of research papers, including papers written in the journals indexed by the Web of Science and Scopus. I have some critical remarks. Sometimes it was quite impossible to understand the logic. You also write about the quality determinants, but this is probably a task for your future research. And I suppose these are quite technical remarks. I would like to say that my critical remarks are not major remarks. They do not change the overall positive assessment of the dissertation. This is a complete independent research which is relevant. The research findings of the dissertation are credible and justified. The dissertation has a practical and theoretical significance. The dissertation by Svetlana Begicheva complies with the major requirements set forth in the relevant order issued by St. Petersburg State University. And Svetlana Begicheva can be awarded the academic degree of the candidate of economic sciences, scientific 522, mathematical, statistical and instrumental methods in economics. The dissertation is compliant with sections 9 and 11 in the above-mentioned order. Thank you. Please answer the questions. Thank you very much for your report. I agree with your technical accuracy. Yes, sometimes it is difficult to follow the logic, whether the contribution was made by myself or by somebody else. Well, the tables were compiled by myself. The quality determinants for different healthcare systems is an important issue. However, I would like to say that timely provision of emergency care and providing the optimal treatment are the key determinants for any healthcare system. The dissertation deals with the Russian model of emergency care. Therefore, I did not make any determinants. However, the two determinants I have just mentioned are really important. I don't think we can come up with something else for any system of healthcare. I would agree with you. Thank you. Now it's my turn to read the report. I would like to say that I agree with my colleagues. However, I would like to emphasize the following. The academic degree seeker used the analogic environment, which allowed him to develop simulation models. I would like to emphasize that this is an up-to-date area of research. In 50s, 60s, we focused on formal models. However, now we focus on the possibility of using software to develop imitation models, to provide assessment, to provide forecasts and so on. So the dissertation is relevant. Moreover, the analogic environment is a Russian software. Over the past 2 years, we have seen very few similar software. As far as I understand, they are trying to enter the international market, but at present it is widely used in Russia. So the dissertation is interesting also in terms of the purpose of the dissertation and in terms of the implementation of this purpose. So you talked at length about the possibilities to introduce new conditions, to provide average assessment, and so on. As far as I understand, you have done a larger scope of work than what we see in the text in the dissertation. You have published a lot of papers, so I suppose you have conducted a large scope of work. You have conducted several experiments, and I suppose it makes the research findings credible. The degree seeker uses the scientific methods correctly. The dissertation is also well written and logically developed. I'm not going to talk again about the number of papers that you have published. I have never come across a case when the academic degree seeker has published so many papers. So the research findings are published in scientific journals. I agree with my colleagues when it comes to scientific novelty. However, I would like to emphasize that the adjustment of the model is also an important issue here. The model allows for different parameters and for different variations. Therefore, we see the adjustment of the model. So I really liked how you adjusted the model, which allowed you to come to the research findings that you have in your dissertation. So I suppose the dissertation has scientific novelty. The dissertation also has practical significance. We see the results of your calculations. I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues said here. I have some questions, however. Simulation modeling, when you adjust it, involves different parameters and different variations. So is it possible to apply this model in practice? Was this model assessed in practice? Was this model checked against the practice? Well, I would like to say that probably people who don't have enough knowledge in simulation modeling will not be able to use the model. So it's important to validate the model in practice. Since it's not a standard model, we have a more complex situation here, which takes into account changes in conditions and changes in parameters. So to what extent can this be validated in practice? On page 29 and 30, you mentioned logistic systems of emergency healthcare. So to what extent the methods and models developed in the dissertation are related to the organization and functioning of such systems? You also use lots of English terms in your dissertation. So I suppose you use too many English terms. So I would like to emphasize this as well. However, I would like to say that taking into account everything that has been said before, the critical remarks do not change the overall positive assessment of the dissertation. Moreover, the dissertation is relevant and has theoretical significance. It contains important research findings, both in the theoretical and practical aspect. Therefore, the dissertation by Svetlana Begicheva, Models of Availability and quality of emergency care in the megapolis complies with the major requirements set forth in the relevant order issued by St. Petersburg State University, and Svetlana Begicheva can be awarded the academic degree of the candidate of economic sciences, scientific specialty 522, mathematical, statistical, and instrumental methods in economics. The dissertation is compliant with sections 9 and 11 in the above-mentioned order. Please answer the questions. Thank you very much. So you asked me about validation. The algorithms which are used in my dissertation, the research findings were discussed with one of the heads of the emergency department in the city of Yekaterinburg. So is it simple to implement this model? Any logic allows us to have an interface which allow us to put the parameters that we need. However, it's more complicated to use the model in another city, and it could be difficult for a person who is not familiar with the issue. You also asked me about the logistical aspect. My dissertation gives a definition of logistics. So how are the methods connected or related to the logistical aspect? Logistics of emergency care is given in the dissertation. It's the planning and processing of the resources and information necessary to provide high-quality medical care at the point of need, or with the possibility of transportation to inpatient hospitals. My model allows to optimize the resource planning, which is important for providing high-quality medical health care. So part of the definition of the logistics was sort of quoted in the algorithm. Did I answer your question? Yes, I understand. Would you like to add anything else? You also mentioned that I use lots of English terms. These terms are widely used in any logic. You need specific terms when you work with the analogic environment, so there was no other way out for me. Thank you very much. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, are there any questions? Is everybody satisfied with the answers? I would like to say something. So Svetlana answered my questions. Well, I'm not really satisfied because she talked about long-term decisions and mid-term decisions. I would like to say that it is not connected with the strategy. Strategy and strategic decisions when it comes to medical health care is connected with the makeup of the medical team, for example. Will it include doctors or paramedics, and also the professional background of those teams? So I would like to say that the academic degree seeker should read some specific papers related to strategic planning. You teach at the university, so it's important to have very accurate terminological framework. I would like to say that we should refer to normative documents as well, namely the Healthcare Development Strategy 2025. It has indicators for healthcare. Thank you very much for your comment. When we deal with normative documents, they use their specific terminological framework. Sometimes their terminological framework contradicts academic terminological framework. Therefore, I suppose we should take this into account. So again, I would like to reiterate, strategy and period of time are different issues. Many strategic decisions have a long-term character, but this is not the same. I suppose you should define the term more accurately, since there is a common terminology which is used in a specific area. So you should probably pay attention to the terms that you use and use it accurately, or at least explain what you mean by a specific term. Does anybody want to say anything else? I don't have any questions. We haven't received any questions via email. So there's no need to answer any questions received by email. Now I would like to give the floor to the academic degree, or I would like to give the floor to the research supervisor. So Professor Nazarov, the floor is yours. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, I would like to characterize Svetlana Begicheva as a serious research worker. She is the associate head of the department. She is involved in serious research work. She supervises students' research work, very successful students' research work. Her students received different prizes in academic competitions. So I would like to characterize her as a very thoughtful and understanding person. She is really an expert in her field. I would like to emphasize that she has a good scientific acumen. She can conduct experiments. She can write software herself. She has conducted lots of experiments for her dissertation. Also, I would like to emphasize that many of her papers were published abroad. She made presentations at international conferences. We also shared our research with SAP ACP, which is an international company which deals with digital management software, and they really liked her model. So as scientists, we understand that numerous interpretations are sometimes available in scientific research. However, they do not change the overall assessment of the dissertation. And I would like to say that Svetlana Begicheva's papers are quoted by other scholars and scientists. Dear colleagues, does anybody want to say something or to make a presentation? Okay, then I have questions. I think we should proceed with the agenda. Do you think we need a technical break before open balloting? I don't think we need a technical break. We can start voting. I will be asking each member of the Dissertation Council. I think we can proceed with open balloting. I am Professor Akulin. I agree with my colleague. Professor Ivanov, what's your opinion? Professor Kievich, what do you think? I agree with my... Now, okay, now it's time for open balloting. It's 3:32 Moscow time. I hear and see everybody. Can you hear and see me? Well, I can hear and see everyone. So, we're beginning the open voting on the issue of conferring the academic degree of the candidate of Economic Sciences, Scientific Specialty 522, Mathematical, Statistical and Instrumental Methods in Economics. I will ask each member of the Dissertation Council their opinion. I suppose that each of the reports stated that the dissertation is compliant with Section 11 of the relevant order issued by St. Petersburg State University. I'm not going to quote this item, and I suppose you agree that the dissertation is compliant with item 11, which is about the fact that the academic degree seeker is supposed to make relevant references. The decision of the Dissertation Council on conferring the academic degree is positive, provided more than 50% of the Council members have voted in favor. The total number is not to be fewer than 3 people. This is in conformity with Section 23 of the order. So, dear colleagues, let us proceed with the agenda. So, Professor Akulin, what's your opinion? Dear colleagues, I vote in conferring the academic degree of the candidate of economic sciences to Svetlana Begicheva. Professor Ivanov, what's your opinion? Dear colleagues, I vote in favor of conferring the academic degree of candidate of economic sciences, scientific specialty 522 mathematical, statistical, and instrumental methods in economics. Thank you. Professor Voronov, what's your opinion? Dear colleagues, I vote in favor of conferring the academic degree of the candidate of economic sciences to Svetlana Begicheva, scientific specialty 522 mathematical, statistical, and instrumental methods in economics. What's your opinion? Yes, I vote in favor. I am the chairperson of the Dissertation Council. I also vote in favor of conferring the academic degree. So, as a result of our open balloting, five members voted in favor of conferring the academic degree. Nobody voted against or abstained from voting. So, we confer the academic degree of the candidate of economic sciences to Svetlana Begicheva, scientific specialty 522. I suppose there are no objections, so this is our decision. We confer the academic degree to Svetlana Begicheva. We also need to approve the conclusion of the Dissertation Council. So we have a conclusion related to the defense procedure, which is taking place now. The dissertation consists of Professor Vorontsovsky, Professor Akulin, Professor Ivanov, Professor Voronov, and Professor Kievich. So we conclude that the dissertation written by Svetlana Begicheva, Models of Availability and Quality of Emergency Care in the Megapolis, complies with the major requirements set forth in the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, issued by St. Petersburg State University. Scientific specialties 522 mathematical, statistical, and instrumental methods in economics. So our decision is to confer the academic degree of the candidate of economic sciences to Svetlana Begicheva, scientific specialty 522 mathematical, statistical, and instrumental methods in economic. The dissertation is compliant with section 11 of the above-mentioned order. This is the conclusion of this Dissertation Council. I hope we approve this conclusion. Now I give the floor to Svetlana Begicheva for a closing speech. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the members of the Dissertation Council and the chairperson of the Dissertation Council for your interest in my dissertation and for reading my dissertation. I would like to thank my research supervisor, Professor Dmitry Nazarov, I also would like to thank Professor Kalabina of Ural State University. I would like to thank the authorities of Ural State University. I would like to thank everyone. I'm really proud and I'm really happy. Thank you. As the chairperson, I would like to congratulate you on being awarded the academic degree. I hope you will continue your research. I suppose your future research will also deal with the visualization of different models. I suppose the environment you're working with has all the necessary possibilities, and I wish you every success in your future research. Thank you. Dear colleagues, dear members of the Dissertation Council, that is all. We are within the time limits. Thank you. Thank you for your work. That is the end of the session of the Dissertation Council.